Welcome to the Mystic Media channel. I am your host, Rubina Rastaban, aka the Realist Astrologer. And I just had to get in on this Rae Carruth story. So I've been meaning to do a case study about Rae Carruth for quite a while now. So when I learned that he was being released from prison after serving, 17 years? I'm not sure if he served the whole 17-year sentence. Um, I was like, oh, this is a great time to do a case study about Rae Carruth. So I remember when this story first came out back in the 90s, I think it happened. Oh, 2001 it happened. And I do remember hearing about this. Now, some of my younger viewers may not be familiar with this story. So if not, you can Google him. But I'm going to read it from Wikipedia, some excerpts, just to fill you in on the story. So I'm going to do a reading about Rae Carruth. And also, I meant to pull up his transit too. So I'm going to do that as well. Now, before I do that, I just wanted to thank my participants who signed up for my last workshop. It was called Real Talk Transits, What the Cancer North Node Has in Store for You. And we had a really good time, and we gained a lot of insight into our past as well as into our future. So that's what the workshop is about. So one thing that I feel like I did at first, I feel like I made a mistake with was scheduling it during Venus retrograde because I had a small turnout. But then the day after, I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I actually like the small turnout. So some of my workshops, I'm going to limit it to a handful of participants. So I say all this to basically say that I'm thinking about putting on another Real Talk Transits, what the Cancer North Node has in store for you workshop in November. So if you are interested in taking this workshop, which is very enlightening, very insightful, I even gained a lot of insight about myself, especially about my past. And I pulled my North Node transit. So I've been looking and seeing what could be coming down the road. Looks like I might be relocating by next year. And I did say that I said I want uh, this to be my last year where I'm currently at. So it looks like that's in the works. And with the North Node being in Cancer, dealing with home, that makes a lot of sense. So if you would like to gain some insight into your past as well as your future, I'm really thinking about putting on another workshop for this. So let me know in the comments section if this is something you would be interested in. And I will host another workshop pertaining to this special transit that's coming up. Now, let's get into this Rae Carruth. So, Rae Carruth, Rae the Otis Carruth, born Ray Lamar Wiggins, January 20th, 1974, is an American criminal and former American football wide receiver. After playing college football at Colorado, Carruth was drafted in the first round of the 1997 NFL Draft by the Carolina Panthers of the National Football League and spent 3 years with the team. In 2001, he was found guilty of conspiring to murder his then girlfriend, Cherika, or I think it's Cherika Adams, who was pregnant with his child. Including pre-trial confinement, he served 18 years of an 18, so he served 18 years. So he served 18 years of an 18 to 24-year prison sentence at the Sampson Correctional Institution in Clinton, North Carolina, and was released on October 22nd, 2018. So let me keep that date in mind so when I pull the transits. So he was born and raised in Sacramento, California, blah, 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 blah. Personal life. During Carruth's sophomore year at Colorado, his girlfriend, Michelle Wright, gave birth to their son, Raylando. So Rae Carruth already had a child before he murdered his pregnant girlfriend. It was a different woman. Now, Carruth all but neglected Raylando until Wright sued him for child support. Wright later testified that Carruth agreed to pay $2,700 in child support, half of what he was ordered to pay by a judge, on condition that he be a better father, something he failed to do. Legal trouble. On November 16, 1999, near Carruth's home in Charlotte, North Carolina, Cherika Adams, so it did happen in 99, Cherika Adams, a real estate agent he had been casually dating, was shot 4 times by Van Brett Watkins Sr., a nightclub manager, and an associate of Carruth. Adams managed to call 911 and said that Carruth had stopped his vehicle in front of hers and that another vehicle drove alongside and its passenger had shot her. Carruth then drove away from the scene. Keep that in mind. He drove away from the scene. Now, you'll see when I talk about his chart, all of this is going to make sense. Now, Adams was 8 months pregnant with Carruth's child at the time. Soon after her admission to the hospital, she fell into a coma. Doctors delivered the baby via emergency cesarean section. Carruth went to the police and posted $3 million bail on condition that either Adams or the infant die, he would turn himself in. Adams died on December 14, 1999. The baby, named Chancellor Lee Adams, survived but suffered permanent brain damage and cerebral palsy as a result of being without oxygen for 70 minutes before he was born. Carruth quickly fled after Adams' death, but was captured on December 15th in West Tennessee, found hiding in the trunk of a car outside of a motel in Parker's Crossroads. The trunk also contained $3,900 cash, bottles of his urine, extra clothes, candy bars, and a cell phone. The Panthers waived him on December 16th, citing a morals clause. That's going to explain a lot too when I'll talk about his chart, the morals part. And the NFL suspended him indefinitely on December 17th. All right. So he was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle, and using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. He was sentenced to 18 to 24 years in prison. He was found not guilty of first-degree murder, and so was spared the death penalty. He got off lightly, if you ask me. Now I'm going to pull up his chart, and we're going to get into it. All right, let me just move this up. Okay, so he was born January 20th, 1974. That 20 birth number is about awakening. So he will go through periods in his life where one phase of his life is drastically different from the next. Also, the 20th degree pertains to women, also pertains to pregnancy and home. The home theme deals with him having to spend significant time in prison. Now, his life path number is 24. That breaks down to 6. That deals with relationships, but also money. It can make a person spoiled and too focused on money, either gaining money, keeping money, what have you. It can also result in someone wanting an easy life. Also, it can point to drastic changes in home. So again, that reinforces the 20, that part, because when you break the two numbers apart, 2 and 4, that could be drastic changes in terms of your home environment. Now, also 24, when you break it down to 6, that's the court system, also like dealing with his trial and conviction, but also the child support with his first child. Now, as you can see, Rae Carruth doesn't have any planets in water, and that can produce someone who lacks empathy. Now, his sun is at the 0 degree of Aquarius, and that 0 degree, especially because it's only a few minutes in, well, I don't know what time he was born, so I don't know how many minutes it is, but that 0 degree, you could look at it as the heaven degree, basically where anything is permissible. And if we're talking about the sun, you can look at it as where anything is permissible in terms of ego gratification or in terms of self-preservation. It can make him very insensitive, emotionally vapid. His sun is conjoined to Venus. That reinforces his life path number of 24 and 6. And that points to him identifying too much with money and with what he has. So when someone takes his money, he really takes it hard. Basically, it also points to him having a huge sense of entitlement, that Aquarius energy. Also, again, it reinforces the theme of him being spoiled. His sun is also conjoined to Mercury, and that makes him even more insensitive since he easily rationalizes his motivation. Now, his sun is in quincunx to Saturn, and that right there can point to fearing the birth of another child, so he's going to do something about it to make it right. So fearing the birth of another child because he was already paying child support and he took that hard. He was already a no good father, a deadbeat dad, and he had to be forced to step up to the plate. So he had this fear within him of going through this again and having this money taken from him. It also points to this Sun quincunx Saturn, also points to his scheme he hatched involving the fake carjacking, because Gemini deals with cars. Now his Sun is in square to Uranus right here, and that points to him having sociopathic tendencies. And with his Uranus and Libra, that points to the relationship factor and also the courts, and also points to when he's in relationships, it's either his way or the highway. It can make him rather unloving and also cold-hearted, detached, and also where he has a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of personality. Also, it could point to him hiring that associate, and that associate basically pointing him out in court, because that's what happened. That dude that he hired to be a hitman, who he knew from being a bouncer, like that was like his homie, or not really a friend, but an associate. And that Uranus represents the associate, and that square represents that associate basically betraying him in court, pointing him out. And he called him something, I forget, but you could see the video. And this dude, the one that killed Sharika, I mean, he is so cold-blooded, cold-hearted, straight up evil. He shows no remorse. Anyway, he hated Rae Carruth by the time they were in trial. Also, his Mars is square in Mercury. So here's his Mars in Taurus. That means he's very much about getting money, keeping money. So he has Mars square in Mercury, and that right there can point to a deviant mind, especially because Mercury is in Aquarius. Deranged, mentally unhinged, trigger happy, likes to put his hands on people, basically forcing them to get him to do what they want. I mean, what he wants. So the force thing, that points to his attraction to football. So I was just thinking, like, football players in particular, a lot of them could have a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. And the ones, you notice there's a lot of stories about football players, going off on their girlfriends and being abusive and stuff like that. I think more so than any other sport. So I think a lot of football players do have this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of personality, where they can get like brutal and like violent, like seriously, but some of them are able to just save it for the field, save it for the game, but some of them, they can't control it, and it comes out in their personal relationships. And I see Rae Carruth being that way. Like, I see football for him being a release of a lot of pent-up anger and aggression. So Mars square Mercury can also make him disagreeable, getting people to do things by force, like I said, by him putting his hands on them or threatening them. And also you could just point to Mars squaring Mercury, where his ego and his anger will cloud his logic. So when all this was going down, you can look at it as he wasn't thinking straight, because he was just full of this blind rage. Like, how could she get pregnant? Not even taking responsibility for himself, how he put himself in this position. Now his Mars is also squaring Venus, and that points to discord and conflict, especially with women. Also points to child support, Mars and Taurus being a thorn in his side. So Mars and Taurus just deals with him, first of all, being very much about self-preservation at all costs, also about getting that money, keeping that money. And with it squaring Venus, Venus represents women. Aquarius deals with entitlement, so you could look at it as a woman that's entitled to his money. So it's like that square is like he has a big conflict with that, even though he's the one who put himself in this situation. Now his Venus is running parallel to Juno, asteroid Juno. Juno's at the 23rd degree of Capricorn. Now that Venus, again in Aquarius, that deals with women who are entitled to his money. Juno represents the main issues in your relationships. So women entitled to his money, but also a lot of it due to his career, because that's that Capricorn influence. And it also brings the theme of responsibility into view, which is very big in his chart. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. His Mars is also parallel to fixed star Alhena, and that can point to have a mission. His Mars runs parallel to Aldebaran, and that can make him popular. That can bring acclaim, but it can also deal with agitation, danger, loss, and it can produce violent deaths. And it's at the 9th degree of Gemini. And Gemini rules cars. 9th degree could deal with violence, it could deal with guns, and she was shot in the car. You can't make this stuff up. Now, about the responsibility thing, his Saturn right here, I don't know what time he was born, so don't pay attention to the houses, but it doesn't matter because it's all straight. It's very apparent how he's wired. So Saturn is at that 29th degree and it's conjoined to the South Node. Now, that 29th degree deals with conflicts, especially with women. It also represents pregnancy because it breaks down to two. It also represents a triangle situation. So you could look at it as he's looking at, damn, now I'm going to have two baby mamas, two pregnancies you could look at. Motherhood is a major theme of the 29th degree, but of course there's some conflict with the motherhood. Saturn's running parallel to Nemesis, and Nemesis deals with where you place blame. So Nemesis is at the 19th degree of Leo. I'll show you right here. Nemesis is at the 19th degree of Leo, running parallel to Saturn, and that right there deals with him blaming children or seeing children as his nemesis, as the cause of his problem. Now, Jupiter, well, let me go back to Saturn because that Saturn is about responsibility. It's also about fatherhood. And the fact that it's conjoined to the South Node, that deals with his past life. So that is showing you that he has been through this before. In a past life, more than likely, he was a father of multiple children from multiple women, and he got caught up, and he probably ended up being destitute as a result of having to be responsible for all of these children. And in this lifetime, he has that past life recall, but he can't really, because it's not coming through his conscious mind in terms of past life recall, he can't make sense of why he's filled with this blind rage about this. He just acts on it. So that Saturn at the 29th degree conjoined to the South Node at that 26th degree. That 26th degree is partnerships, but partnerships that require a repayment of karmic debt. Now, Saturn is conjoined to Betelgeuse, and that fixed star can bring fortune and fame, but also danger and violence. He has violence all up in his chart. His Saturn is conjoined to Polaris, and that points to sickness. And since Polaris is in Gemini, that sickness can be mental illness. Also brings loss and affliction. So you can look at that as mental affliction. Also, with that Saturn conjoined to his Gemini South Node, that points to the cops finding him hiding in the trunk of his car. Because again, that Gemini theme deals with cars. So it just shows that Rae Carruth is a very fearful person. And that points to that Saturn influence on his South Node. And again, it goes back to that past life recall of being in the same situation before, siring multiple children through multiple women. Now, his South Node is running parallel to the fixed star Hamal. Hamal brings violence, cruelty, brutality, and Hamal is at the 7th degree of Taurus, and that reinforces the theme of like fearing the loss of money, being paranoid in terms of money. Now, with his North Node being in Sagittarius, that points to his football career, especially since the North Node's at the 26th degree, but it also points to legal trouble due to karmic debt relationships, also points to challenges with his freedom, and also where he's like a vigilante, like vigilante justice. He's taking justice in his own hands by putting a hit out on the woman that got pregnant. that he got pregnant. And I can also point to a God complex. And also, let me just show you this picture right here. Hold on. That North Node is Sagittarius, especially because it's conjoined to the moon. That moon deals with the women theme. But let me just show you this real quick. All right, do you see him right here? This is a picture of him in prison. He got a kufi on. That's him getting out. Or it looked like a kufi to me. And a kufi is a hat that Muslims wear. There's another picture where he's in prison where he looks like, basically what I'm saying is it looks like he became a Muslim in prison, which is so typical. So basically he became a Farah convict. You know, that whole one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, knick-knack, paddywhack, that type of bullshit. So I'm not buying it, Rae Carruth, because I see what's in your chart. You're a sociopath. So I won't be surprised if he commits another crime, maybe not as egregious as the last, but I won't be surprised if he commits another crime. Let me just go back to his chart. Because somebody with his hookup, all them years in prison, I don't think it has cured him of what ails him inside, especially if if he's going to get another woman pregnant. Another woman, oh, shoot, she better be careful. Now, just a few more things. So his Pluto is running parallel to Ras al-Hag, and that right there is a fixed star that can bring trouble with women. Also can deal with drug addiction and perverted tastes. Pluto is also running contra-parallel to the asteroid Arachne, and that deals with him weaving a web of deceit and betrayal, to basically him hiring that hitman. Pluto would represent the hitman. Now his Neptune is conjoined to Antares, and that deals with success, which can become obsessive. So that deals with him wanting to, because Antares is in Sagittarius, so that could deal with him wanting to maintain his freedom at all costs, even if that means, you know, taking a woman out. And freedom can mean freedom from having to pay child support or any more child support. Also, Antares can bring violence. It can produce sudden losses. It can make him very obstinate and very stubborn. And then lastly, his Chiron is running contra-parallel to Atlantis, which is very interesting, and it reinforces what I said about the theme of fear being very strong in his chart. And you know he's a fearful person. Anytime he skipped court and was hiding in the trunk of his car, I mean, that's pathetic. Now, Atlantis, which is interesting, is at the 11th degree of Libra. That 11, again, it represents women, pregnancy. It points to, because it's at the 11th degree of Libra, it points to the child support, him fearing child support, because Atlantis can deal with past life recall. Usually the past life recall deals with some type of tragic or catastrophic event. A lot of times Atlantis can point to phobias. So you could look at this aspect, Chiron, contra-parallel Atlantis, as basically him having a phobia of being taken to court for more child support. So that's my reading on Rae Carruth. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm going to be back with more videos, so stay tuned. And peace and many blessings. And if you would like a reading, you could go to my website at rabina.com. Peace and many blessings.